The desert was a living beast, breathing, shifting, whispering, its breath hot with the scent of iron and sunburnt stone, its bones stretching for miles beneath an amber sky. In the middle of that endless nowhere stood the old ranch of Elias Brandt, a man weathered by wind and solitude, whose heart had dried out long before the earth around him did. He lived by the rhythm of the sun, rise, work, eat, mend, sleep, a simple cycle carved by habit, not hope. His only company was the moan of the wind through broken shutters and the low creak of the corral gate, swinging in time with the ghosts of memory. The townfolk, 50 miles south, called him the last shadow of the frontier, a relic left behind by time. But the Apache elders spoke differently. They said his ranch stood on bloodied soil, land once used for sacred vows, where spirits watched and waited for debts unpaid. Elias never cared for such talk. Whiskey dulled the past just fine. But that night, when the wind began to hum like a woman's voice, and the stars vanished behind a crawling wall of dust, something deep within him stirred. The storm came sudden and violent, not a storm of rain, but one of sand and whispers. He locked his doors, covered the windows, and waited, the old Winchester laid across his knees. Then came the knock, 3 slow, deliberate knocks. He froze, the fire crackling behind him like nervous laughter. Again, 3 knocks, then silence, the kind that pressed against your skull. He opened the door, expecting wind. Instead, he saw 6 women standing barefoot in the moonlit dust. They wore dresses the color of the desert, ochre, rust, shadow, and their eyes were black pools reflecting both sky and sorrow. Their hair was braided with feathers and copper beads that shimmered faintly even in the dark. The one in front stepped forward, her face calm but carved from something older than flesh. "You are Elias Brandt," she said, her voice smooth as smoke. "You live upon our ancestors' ground. We have watched you through many seasons, and now we come with a request." Elias adjusted his grip on the rifle. "What kind of request?" he asked. The woman's lips curved, though it was not a smile. "To marry us," she said softly. "All 6. He blinked, thinking the storm had scrambled his wits. "Lady, I think the wind's gotten to you," he muttered, half turning away. But the women did not move. Their eyes shimmered like black glass, and the air grew colder, heavier. One of them whispered words he didn't understand, the language curling like smoke through the night. The fire behind him hissed as if in reply. "Say yes," the leader warned, "or the land will take you as it took the others." "Others," Elias rasped, but his voice vanished into the wind. A strange sound rose around him, not laughter, not sorrow. Something between both and the 6 women began to fade, their shapes unraveling like dust in sunlight. The storm roared once more, blinding him, and when he opened his eyes, the night was still. The women were gone. Only 6 faint footprints remained in the dust, each facing toward his door. Elias stumbled back inside, locking the world out. On the mantel above the dying fire sat 6 clay rings carved with symbols he didn't know, still warm as if held by human hands. He sank into his chair, the rifle trembling in his grasp. Outside, the desert exhaled softly, and through the cracks of his old house drifted a sound that could have been the wind or 6 unseen voices whispering his name. Morning crawled in slow and cold, the light, thin as paper, creeping through the cracks of the old ranch house like it was afraid to touch what had happened there. Elias Brandt woke in his chair, boots still on, rifle across his lap. The fire long dead and the air tasting of dust and iron. For a moment, he thought it had been a dream. 6 women, 6 voices, the impossible request, until his eyes lifted to the mantel. The 6 clay rings still sat there, aligned in a perfect row, faintly glowing where the firelight should have faded. He rubbed his face, grumbling, trying to shake the strange pulse of unease that sat in his chest like a second heartbeat. Outside, the desert was silent. No wind, no birds, not even the usual cry of the hawk that circled his land each dawn. It was as if the world had stopped breathing. He stepped outside, squinting at the horizon. The storm had swept clean everything but those footprints in the dust, 6 pairs, each leading from nowhere and ending at his porch. He crouched, running a calloused hand over the marks. The sand beneath them was cold as stone. Hell, he muttered, standing. He'd seen strange things in his life. A man shot dead, still standing. A horse that found its own grave, but nothing that could quiet his nerves like this. He went to the barn, saddled his old horse, Boone, and decided he'd ride into town. Maybe see the preacher. Maybe just drown himself in whiskey at the saloon. But when he tried to leave, Boone wouldn't move. The animal's ears pinned back, nostrils flaring, eyes wide like it smelled death. "Come on now, boy," Elias urged, tugging at the reins. Boone refused, muscles shaking. Then Elias heard it, a whisper, faint but close, drifting over the sand like smoke. "Elias." The horse reared, nearly throwing him. The whisper came again, this time behind him. He turned sharply, rifle ready. No one there, only the desert, shimmering with heat that didn't belong to morning. Then, from the corner of his eye, he saw them, 6 shadows, standing among the mesquite trees, still as carved stone. The same women, the same eyes. "You again," he rasped, anger covering the fear clawing at his throat. The leader stepped forward, her movements so fluid the sand didn't stir under her feet. "You did not answer," she said. "You must choose." He spat. "Choose what?" Her gaze hardened. "The rings are your bond. Each one carries a promise, 6 lives bound to yours. If you deny us, this land will drink your blood as it drank theirs." Elias's jaw tightened. "Whose blood?" The wind picked up suddenly, whirling dust into ghostly shapes. He heard screams, distant, echoing through time, the sound of men dying, of fire cracking against stone. The air stank of smoke and sweat and old vengeance. "The men who broke their word," she said, her voice rising with the storm. "The ranchers who took what was sacred and buried it beneath greed." Elias stumbled back, heart hammering. "I ain't one of them," he shouted. The woman's eyes softened, sorrow cutting through the fire. "No," she said quietly, "but you live on their bones." Then she held out her hand. One of the clay rings floated from the mantel behind him, crossing the air like a ghostly ember, landing in her palm. "The first belongs to you now," she said. "The others will follow." Before he could speak, she pressed the ring into his hand, and it burned cold. He gasped, dropping it, but it didn't fall. It sank through his skin like water, disappearing. His palm glowed faintly, marked by the same symbol carved into the ring. The storm fell silent. The women vanished once more. Only the wind remained, whispering through the canyon in a voice that no longer sounded like the wind at all. It sounded like vows. By the time the sun sank again behind the western ridges, Elias Brandt had stopped pretending the world still made sense. The mark on his hand glowed faintly beneath his skin, not bright, not burning, but pulsing like the beat of a buried heart. He'd scrubbed it raw, wrapped it in cloth, cursed it until his throat went dry. But the symbol only shimmered stronger in the dark. He sat on the porch with a bottle of rye whiskey and the rifle leaning against his knee, staring at the 6 clay rings still resting on the mantel through the open doorway. 5 now, since one had vanished into him. The desert was unnaturally quiet, the kind of silence that carried its own weight, like the pause between lightning and thunder. The horses wouldn't eat. The windmills didn't turn. Even the stars above seemed to hang lower, watching him. Elias had never been a man of fear, but that night he felt watched from all sides, by the land, by the air, by something older than either. He raised the bottle, took a long swallow, and muttered, "You want me dead. Come take me yourself." But the desert didn't answer, not with sound, anyway. Instead, the ground trembled faintly, like the earth exhaled. A soft hum rose from nowhere, from everywhere. Then footsteps, slow, bare. He turned, rifle up. Standing at the edge of the porch was a man, or something shaped like one. Tall, lean, dressed in tattered Apache garb, face streaked with ash and red paint. His eyes glowed the same faint amber as Elias's hand. "Who the hell are you?" Elias barked. The man tilted his head, voice low and ancient. "Guardian of the vow," he said. "You carry what you do not understand." "I didn't ask for it," Elias growled. The man stepped closer, his shadow stretching unnaturally long. "The earth doesn't ask either. It remembers. The 6 brides are not women as you think them. They are oaths broken long ago. When your kind took this land, they took more than soil. They took promise, blood, faith. Now you are chosen to mend what was shattered." Elias's grip tightened on the rifle. Chosen by who? The spirit's gaze flicked toward the desert horizon, where the sky shimmered as if hiding fire beneath the sand. "By the ones buried beneath your boots." Suddenly the ground cracked, a jagged line ripping through the dust just beyond the porch. From it rose a faint red mist, smelling of rust and rain that never came. Elias staggered back, heart pounding. Shapes moved within the haze, figures crawling, reaching, whispering in tongues that rattled like dry leaves. "No," Elias muttered. "Not possible." The spirit looked at him, almost pitying. "The first ring binds your soul. The second will test your blood." Then, like smoke caught by wind, he vanished. The mist sank back into the earth. The ranch was still again, but the silence had changed, heavier, darker. Elias stumbled inside, shut the door, and braced it with a beam. His hand throbbed beneath the bandage, glowing through the fabric like a buried ember. On the mantel, one of the remaining 5 rings cracked, a thin line crawling across its surface like a vein. He stared at it, breath shallow. Then the whisper returned, soft and close, a woman's voice in his ear. One by one, Elias Brandt. He spun around, but the lamp flame beside him bent sideways, as if someone had moved past. He could smell her sage, smoke, and wild rain, the same scent from the night they appeared. He looked down and saw a faint trail of red dust leading from the door to the center of the room. There, the floorboards bulged upward as if something beneath the ranch had begun to breathe. And beneath that breath, faint and steady, came the rhythm of drums, old, ancient, waiting for the next vow to be claimed. The night bled into morning without a sunrise. The horizon drowned in a strange copper haze that turned the sky the color of old blood. Elias Brandt hadn't slept. He sat in the same chair, staring at the floorboards that now pulsed faintly, as if something beneath was breathing slow and deep. Every hour or so, he heard the low beat of drums from underground, steady, patient, like a heart waiting to wake. The cracked ring on the mantel had split completely some time before dawn, and from its center leaked a thin curl of red smoke that refused to fade, coiling lazily through the air before vanishing into the cracks in the wall. Elias's hand still burned faintly, but the pain had dulled into something worse, a pull, like a tether, dragging him toward the desert outside. By noon, he couldn't fight it anymore. He strapped on his old revolver, threw on his hat, and stepped into the heat. The desert felt different now, alive, aware, watching him. Every rock, every shadow seemed to shift when he looked away. He followed the faint trail of smoke drifting from the ranch toward the dry riverbed. There, standing among the dead mesquite, was one of the women. Not all 6 this time, just one. She wore a white buckskin dress, long braids wrapped in crimson thread, eyes as dark as night but filled with something softer than before. "You came," she said, her voice echoing faintly as though carried through water. "Did I have a choice?" Elias muttered, stopping a few feet away. She tilted her head. "No one ever does. The second ring calls for blood, but it need not be yours." Her words sent a chill crawling down his spine. "Then whose?" he asked, voice rough. She looked past him toward the ranch, where the faint outline of a figure shimmered, a man on horseback, distant, spectral. Elias turned sharply, hand on his gun, but the shape vanished. "You will see," she whispered. "Before the sun dies, the desert will remember." Then she stepped closer, the air warping slightly around her, as if heat bent reality itself. Elias felt his throat tighten. She wasn't ghostly now, not fully. Her breath was real. Her shadow touched the earth. Her eyes held sorrow too deep to fake. "Why me?" he asked. "Why my land?" She reached out, fingertips grazing his marked hand, and the symbol flared like silver fire. In that instant, his vision split, 2 worlds overlapping. He saw the same desert, but greener, alive with color and movement. Saw Apache villages, fires burning, songs echoing through the canyons. Saw soldiers riding in under the flag of conquest. Saw betrayal, massacre, and 6 women forced to watch as their husbands were killed and their vows burned to ash. The ranch he'd built stood atop their graves. He stumbled back, gasping as the vision shattered. The woman, the bride, looked at him with something like pity. "You carry their sin," she said softly. "Now you must carry their promise." The wind rose, swirling dust between them, and her form began to fade again. "Wait," Elias shouted, but she only smiled faintly. "The others will come," she said. "And when the 6th stands before you, the land will decide if it forgives or devours." Then she was gone, dissolved into smoke that sank into the ground, leaving behind a faint ring of burned sand. Elias fell to his knees, the heat of the desert forgotten, the air thick with whispers that weren't wind. He looked down at his hand. Another symbol had appeared beside the first, interlocking like chains. On the horizon, thunder rolled, though no storm brewed. The desert was remembering, and the old rancher could feel the weight of 6 vows closing around his soul like a noose tightening in slow motion. Evening fell like a curtain of ash over the desert, and the wind carried the taste of iron and storm. Elias Brandt stood alone on the porch of his dying ranch. The sky behind him bruised purple and gold, thunder crawling across the horizon like a living beast. His hand glowed faintly now with 2 interlocking symbols, each pulse syncing with the deep rumble beneath the earth. The remaining 4 rings on the mantle had begun to crack, thin fractures glowing red as embers. He could hear the drums again, closer now, slow and steady, like the heartbeat of the land itself. The horses had fled hours ago, their terrified cries swallowed by the wind. The air was thick with the scent of smoke and sage, and Elias knew tonight it would end. He stepped into the open desert, boots sinking into the warm dust, rifle strapped to his back more out of habit than hope. The horizon shimmered, the air bending like heat haze, and through it came 5 figures, the first 5 brides, walking side by side, their faces calm, their eyes unblinking. Behind them, the ground split open with a deep groan, and out of that wound stepped the 6th. She was not like the others. Her hair flowed loose, black as a raven's wing, her dress woven of starlight and sand, her presence both terrifying and holy. "Elias Brandt," she said, her voice echoing through the valley like thunder rolling through bone. "The circle is nearly complete." Elias swallowed hard, his throat dry as salt. "Why me? I never hurt no one. I didn't take what was yours." She studied him with ancient patience. "You live where our blood sleeps. Every man before you chose to own what cannot be owned. You, however, were chosen to remember." He looked down at his glowing hand, anger and fear twisting together. "You call this remembering? You're cursing me for what others did." The 6th bride raised her arms, and the wind howled around them. "A curse and a vow are the same when spoken by the earth," she said. "One binds, one frees. You decide which this will be." The sky cracked with lightning that touched no ground. The other brides began to chant, low, rhythmic, their words ancient, carried on the storm. The ground beneath Elias's boots trembled, glowing lines spreading outward from him in all directions, like veins of molten gold. Faces appeared in the dust, Apache warriors, women, children, watching silently. He dropped to his knees, clutching his hand as pain seared through his arm. Visions poured into him, the massacre, the fire, the broken vows, and the 6 women kneeling in the ashes, swearing that one day their oaths would be reclaimed. The truth struck him like a bullet. They weren't asking for marriage. They were asking for memory, for witness, for atonement. He raised his head, breath ragged. "Then take it," he rasped. "Take my blood, my land, whatever you need, just let it end." The 6th bride's eyes softened, the first flicker of mercy he'd seen in any of them. She placed her hand over his, and the pain vanished. The symbols flared, then sank into his skin, disappearing. The sky split with a single flash of white light, so bright it burned the world clean. When it faded, Elias was alone again. The land was quiet, alive. Grass pushed through the dust where nothing had grown for decades. The air smelled of rain. On the porch of his ranch lay 6 clay rings, whole again, their glow gone. Elias picked one up, and for the first time in years, he smiled, not because he understood, but because the silence no longer felt empty. The wind brushed past him, carrying 6 voices that whispered one word, soft and certain: remember.